You have this prolific body of work that really I think is really cool because on the one hand, it's very contemporary and very edgy. It's digital in its form, but at the same time, it's got strong foundations in your Dakota heritage. And I would just love for you to describe really what your artistic approach is.
Well, I mean, I think growing up as a kid here in the Twin Cities, I didn't see a lot of Native presence. I didn't see anything really authentically telling, like the history of Minnesota from a Native perspective or connections to the land. So I think as an adult, I really started researching these kind of things. And I thought, well, I think a lot of people would love to know these things and would love to learn more about our culture. And so my art really found a purpose, sort of removing that kind of ignorance that people just have from lack of being taught in schools, and making it commonplace. And so kind of one of my, you know, reasons for creating art is to put native art where, I don't know, people don't expect it, but I think it should be everywhere. I don't think it should be confined to maybe just a native art market or just a native museum or something. And so I guess a lot of my artwork it contains sort of an educational aspect to it, but also helping open people's eyes to like the places that they probably drive past every single day, and they can find a deeper meaning to that place and the history that is still there. That I think once you have see it through native eyes, your perspective of Minnesota changes.
Again, back to that word prolific. You have so many things that you're doing. The public art holographs, and the murals, the fabric prints you're creating, the literary press that you're doing. You have all of these different mediums and channels and avenues that you're building. It's almost like you're building an empire around this. And I don't mean that in a draconian way, but you're really like maximizing the different ways for people to experience this. What was your origin though? Like, what was your first, like as an artist, were you first a painter? Were you a designer, graphic designer? What was it that really was your origin in terms of moving into the art world?
I mean, as a kid, I was always drawing sort of fantastical creatures that came out of my mind, or portrait art, I guess. But as I got older, I guess in the late 90s, that's when computers became a little bit more accessible, and we got our first computer and like dial-up internet, and like so excited to sit on that all day before it was socially acceptable like it is today to sit on your phone. But I think in the 90s, is late 90s, early 2000s is when I really got a passion for like digital art. And I'm like telling people about it who like have no idea about any of this stuff. And nowadays, I think people are seeing how digital art can be impactful. I know just starting out, I had a lot of people say, "Oh, that's the computer doing all the work," or "You're not a real artist if you're not drawing with pencils and stuff." And I'm like, I can do those things, and but this is just like a new tool. Like Andy Warhol was one of the first digital artists. He actually has some like pixel art that they extracted from old files and got them to actually show again. And so, I mean, he's sort of one of my inspirations too, is just always doing something in a new medium and reinventing yourself, not really holding yourself back. So I guess I'm always like, with digital art too, there's always new programs coming out and new technology, and that's always something that interests me. And so you'll kind of see my art when I get a new program or something. You're like seeing new ways of me expressing sort of my culture and also the things I just want to critique in society. I think artists have that role, that art can be, they can critique in a way that opens people's eyes to the issues without being too like confronting people in a negative manner. Like it opens their eyes and helps them think about ways they can help change the world.
I hear you speak like that. I instantly go to what it is that you really want someone to take away from our experience of yours.
Well, I mean, I want them to like, I don't know, see a better connection to like the earth around us. Like native art, a lot of it is, it sees the natural world as like a relative. And so I want people to treat the places in Minnesota that same way. Like I don't want it to be um, like the stop line 3, people don't want the water to be polluted because that's sort of, it gives us life, it's a relative, and I want people to sort of take that sort of understanding of what nature actually means to us as human beings and sort of do the little things in their own world, or even talk, like if they see people helping like their friends and stuff understand, like why these issues are important, not just to Native people, but to all people. Because I think a lot of the things that Native people fight for, they're sort of fighting for human beings in general that a lot of people just aren't opening their eyes to.
You and I talked a couple months ago about the NFT phenomenon that's happening in the art world. My initial reaction when I first saw it unfolding and watching Christie's, have a record-breaking sale of an NFT by Beeples, some white guy from South Carolina, and I'm sitting there getting angry, going, "Dang it! You should have put a woman out there." And why would you raise up an artist who doesn't fit the thing, what is a disparity in this place? But you had a different view on it, that just on principle around NFTs and what that means. And tell us a little bit about your thinking on why you're not a fan of that approach.
Yeah, I mean, like they use cryptocurrency to sort of fund these sales in these auctions. So in order to create these tokens, you must use a lot of electricity, and these these people create giant farms of graphic cards that are running nonstop 24 hours to sort of create these tokens. And so it pollutes the planet and such, like creating one token or selling one piece. Like I know one artist, he's talking about how selling one of his works that used more electricity than his studio used in years just to sell that one piece to create the tokens that he generated for that sale. So, I mean, it's just creating native art. Why would I create an artwork that basically is ruining the planet just for me to make $1,000 off of it? It's not even worth it. And, it's against the whole why I'm creating art in general. And I think also what you're talking about, how these NFTs even exist. I feel like when I was talking about how digital art, when I started out, it wasn't taken seriously. And so I think this is just the art world's way of sort of saying, embracing digital art as a real art form nowadays, but also keeping the status quo of just white men, sort of running the show, and they're not listening to um, what's going on around them. Because a lot of digital artists are people of color. They're people like me who just got a computer and had a passion for it. And I think a lot of them started out, stealing their free program that and then hacking their way into sort of developing these skills. So there's a lot of friends all over the world and countries that are even like war torn, like my friend in Yemen. He is a great digital artist, and but you wouldn't think that would be possible in a place like where he grew up, where there's wars constantly. But I feel like that art, his passion for art, sort of, he found ways to make it work, and he is making a living for himself, even in the conditions that he grows up in. So I mean, there's those kind of stories that can be told through who's creating art as a digital artist, and we're not hearing that by just promoting the status quo of just some white guy selling really
Hmm.
expensive art for no reason. Like what's the purpose behind all of this? Why are we even going through all this? Who is it supporting? It's not, like the people who find strength through digital art. It's not those type of people who are getting
Well,
uplifted.
I think that whole description of having the status quo, taking advantage of some of the progress, if you will, from an artistic standpoint, and but then how they manipulate it and do things that the artist himself or herself would have never wanted, and how you have estates that own the rights of works by artists or even their names, like in the case of Bob Ross, and the big battle that's unfolding right now around his estate. I mean, they're selling his color palette to make eyeshadows. Where are you actually optimistic about things that are happening that you see happening among artists?
Yeah, I mean, that happens. And I hope, some people, when they see this Beyonce, Tiffany collaboration or whatever, they see it and they go and actually look at who the artist actually was. Go watch a documentary on him. You see that he is not at all. His art isn't about this. It's not about that, and he wouldn't have used it that way. Like I hope people they don't just look at it at the surface of trying to cancel culture or cancel someone out for doing this, but actually look at what he had to say in his art because I've had people have like they have people like Marilyn Monroe, people like Andy Warhol, people like, these pop icons, people have a certain image in their mind of who they are just because they only see surface level things. So I'm like, go watch this person's actual performance in a movie or go watch them, like listen to them speak. You'll see that who they are is a lot different than what society or corporation has turned them into. And I think sometimes that's a good thing. I think we saw like Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen Fever take over. But growing up, everybody heard Bohemian Rhapsody, everybody heard like We Will Rock You and We Are Champions, whatever. But no one really found the meaning to these songs. They were so commonplace. So I think we saw this movie and we saw, this Rami Malek as, performing as Freddie Mercury and really bringing him to life in a new way that got people to go back and watch old Queen videos, Queen interviews. So like, I feel if we could find living artists who were creating in the 80s, people that, aren't necessarily as sold out as like, I don't know, as some people are, I guess, but really embrace those people who are still here, still alive, and actually have, the way to control how their image is being used. Because, if Bob Ross was here or Basquiat was here, they wouldn't approve of these things, And I think like even Prince, he had an eyeshadow palette that came out with Urban Decay. Would he have worked with that company if he was here? Would he have picked like a black-owned makeup company? Would he have empowered other people? So, I mean, I just think we should look back at sort of the trends of the 80s or the 90s or even the 70s, wherever you want to go back to the era and actually listen to what people were actually saying, not just our perception of them, and sort of embrace it because some of it was ahead of its time. And, I think that's important to bring to today that, there's pioneers even then that were overlooked. And if they were doing their thing today, I think they'd be a lot more successful than they were during their time. So I think it's kind of fun or interesting or motivational to sort of that those people have their moment to shine nowadays.
So let me ask, if there was someone from who's still kicking and you wanted to see an eyeshadow palette or have them do something that breaks through, who would you like to see?
I mean, me personally, like I would love to see Adam Ant just because I thought he was doing a lot of interesting things in the 80s and 90s, and he's still doing tours today, and he would have control over how his image is being used. But, like a lot of the things he was talking about, I think a lot of people today can relate to still. And he even had a connection to Native people in the stuff that he put in his work as well. And that might have not have been the most mainstream place to put Native culture, but he was still doing it in a respectful way that wasn't appropriating us. He wasn't rocking a headdress. He had face paint on, but he actually spoke with like Native leaders about it, and they gave him a tour in museums, and he was super respectful about, what he was doing. And so people sort of felt he was using it in a responsible way after having a conversation, like he didn't get super defensive. No one tried to cancel him, but everybody had a good conversation. So I think that's something also we need to sort of learn to do, I think, as human beings, not get into herd mentalities and attack each other, but actually listen to each other. So I think, he has different perspectives that he could talk about as an artist. I feel like that's what he was, not just his music, but his whole body of what he is presenting on stage, and but look at them and embrace them. But I know everybody wants to always cut the artist out of the deal all the time, whether it's in music, whether it's in art. Like once you die, suddenly your artwork is worth millions of dollars. And some artists never sold a piece of work in their whole life, and their art sells for hundreds of millions of dollars these days, which is insane.
What's up next for you? Like what's inspiring you right now in your creative process, and what are you really excited about that you're working on?
Well, finishing up the augmented reality Dakota Spirit Walk, which will be opening hopefully this month within a couple of weeks at the Burial Mounds Park, and people will be able to see and interact with like the Dakota spirits, like the earth spirit, the stone spirit, the thunder and water spirits, and each of them will teach you a little bit about, like native culture to the land or Dakota culture, and in a fun and new way. I hope it inspires people, like even if a native kid sees this and sees how our spirits are in a way that they look at Pokemon Go, because it's sort of the same technology as a Pokemon game. And I hope it inspires them to think, oh, maybe I'll go into game design and you get some cool native games from a native perspective. And I think that's something, that really keeps me going, is opening these doors or these windows to younger people and let them know that, you can use technology to make your culture, hip and happening into the future and tell our own stories with it. Silver or purple?
Oh,
Like I have a lot of work that like I started to collect or buy, but like this piece I bought by Chuck Yu was one of the first pieces I bought. But then also some of the kids I work with and teach graphic design, like this poster is another, they gave that one to me. So I kind of like have a collection of work that I bought from artists that I admire and I want to wake up every day and that's the first thing I want to see. And then the artwork from students who give me a piece, after I taught them. So, it's kind of showing their gratitude. And so those kind of the pieces I have a lot of. I like southeastern Minnesota. I love all the bluffs along the Mississippi River. I mean, I want to go to other countries like Switzerland now because they have mountains. I want to go to like Latvia because of their Art Nouveau buildings is like one of the cities with the most. That's my favorite art style. So once the pandemic lifts up and if things ever become safe to travel, that's kind of the places I want to go. You've been to Wamney? Anything off of Wamney, the Native American restaurant that just opened downtown Minneapolis? That has been like the best food I've ever eaten. Even the drinks, the non-alcoholic drinks, are like mind blowing. So
really?
everything on the menu, yeah. It's like one of the first times I've been so excited about food. Like I was like, I could have like an emotional moment here just drinking this drink. So I mean, that probably has to be the best food. I mean, I think a lot of women are becoming leaders and creating their own opportunities, creating their own businesses because people won't let us in, so we'll make our own, and we support each other. Well, there's always like my mom, she was doing beadwork, and my grandma, she's doing beadwork. So a lot of native art that you see that's traditionally done has always been by native women. So, I think just that tradition of my art and my culture's art, it's always come from women. That's who inspires me. Well, I'm going to try to support other native people who have the same passion as me with my production company called Unci, and I've gotten extra funding with that to create even more books and animations and videos and all that. So that's sort of where I'm going to be going, I think, with the next year. I mean, you can look at what the artist is doing, like what the meaning behind the work that to create, why they get up every day and want to create this. But you should also, it should also just bring you joy. You should be like the first thing you wake up and you're happy to see it. Or if you want to relax, you can go and be near that piece. You've had that artist's energy still sort of captured in that work, and that's why you want to buy it. It's the sort of like they say, good vibes only or whatever. So it's sort of that reason. I think it's the most important reason for buying art is to create those good vibes.
It's so good to talk with you again, and best wishes with the works that you have underway. And I think you need to just drop Adam a note and chase after a collab with him. I think that would be
Yeah.
be
It'll
pretty
happen. If
badass.
you put out in universe, it can happen. it just takes a couple of who knows who and who can tell them. So maybe it'll get out
Well,
there.
we just pushed it out a little bit more. So